How's it going? Brian.
Brian.
Nice to meet you.
Eric, nice to meet you,
Nice
sir.
to meet you.
Hello.
Thanks for having me. Where should I be?
Right there.
right here.
And you don't need to wear the headphones if you don't want to. Make it easier
Are
on
you
you.
going to wear the headphones?
He doesn't have to
I don't
either.
have to,
I
but
just
I'm-
need to run the board.
Okay.
You don't have to mess that fabulous hair that you have.
That's fine. I can do it.
Sometimes it sounds a little clearer.
There you go.
Work out if I'm
Hey.
holding the mic or not. Whee.
Yeah.
Whoops.
Everything's breaking.
Oh no.
There we go.
Even the news.
Welcome back to the show, ladies and gentlemen. My guest right now, I couldn't be more excited about it. Of course, you know all his roles in various Avengers and Marvel projects. You know him from Crimson Peak. He has a brand new movie called I Saw the Light, but to me, he will forever be the great escapo in The Muppets Most Wanted. Please say hello to Tom Hiddleston. Hello, how are you?
I'm very good. Thank you. I did not expect you to pull that one out of the
You'll
bag.
never get that introduction ever again.
Yeah.
How are you, sir?
I'm good. Very well, yeah. It's good. It's nice to be in New York City. Thanks
Yep.
for having me.
We're very excited to have you here. I mean, I've been a big fan of yours for a long time, and I just found out you have a really weird cult fan following. They call themselves Hiddlestoners.
Yeah. They've been they've been around for a while since the first Thor film. Honestly, my experience with them is that they're very sweet and benign, and they've followed me into some pretty strange territory. So generally, they're just fans of film and the theater, and that's what they call themselves.
I've seen on Instagram they're very aggressive with their love for you.
Are
Like
they?
anybody that mentions anything to do with you or any of your project, whatever, they're all liking it. Tom's amazing. But yes, we know Tom's amazing, but they flood everything about you. And then I found out this whole subculture of Hiddlestoners, and I'm like, I guess I'm one of these people.
You don't have to be. There's no obligation.
Okay, good, because I don't want to make it weird.
He
No,
ordered
no.
shirts and everything.
It's all good. It's very important for it to stay normal.
Well,
Yeah.
there's so many things I want to ask you, but let's start with the important reason that you're here for I Saw the Light, which is out in theaters today, this weekend. Go see it. Amazing choice to have you for Hank Williams, because when they announced that you were going to portray him, I was like, does he look? I couldn't remember Hank Sr., so I went and looked at him. I'm like, oh my God, that shot with the gray background and you have the grayish cowboy hat,
yeah.
and they do side by side. I was like, they nailed it. You were almost exactly him.
Yeah, that was the interesting. I mean, I didn't know that the director and writer Mark Abraham was watching War Horse, the Steven Spielberg movie, about 4 years ago with his wife in the theater, and I was playing a British cavalry officer, and I took my hat off, and he turned to his wife, as he tells me, and said, "That guy looks like Hank. I should give him a call." And then he watched all my other work, and he sent me the script, and I didn't know I looked like Hank until he told me, which it is kind of slightly eerie that from certain angles and certain light, our faces look the same.
It's like one of those gothic horror movies where you see a photo of your great ancestor and it looks exactly like the girl right now. Yeah.
But then after that, of course, as I'm British, as you may have noticed, and the work after that is trying to, I was born in London in 1981. Hank Williams was born in Alabama in 1923, and so was trying to bridge the gap between me and him, dye my hair black, lose the weight, put brown contact lenses in my eyes, and get down to Nashville, get out of London, and dig my heels into the roots of country music in the South.
It's a big thing, at least in the last, I'll say 10 years, I guess since The Wire, that a lot of British actors have these iconic American roles where they're portraying Americans, they have the accents down, even the regional accents in America, not just a general American accent.
Yeah.
You're doing a gentleman from the Deep South. So when you're going to get ready for this character, how do you work on that accent?
The way I did it was even more challenging in the sense that when I listened to him, I realized he had a period accent. So it was very specific to the 40s and the 50s, and it doesn't sound like contemporary Tennessean dialect. And we shot down in Louisiana. They don't actually sound like Hank at all. They sound different, and it was important to get the time period right. You can find this stuff on iTunes, I think, or on the internet, but there are lost concert recordings of some of Hank's gigs all over the South, and he's hilarious. And between sets and between songs, he's had a few.
He's telling
and
stories.
He's telling stories, and he's riffing, and he's ribbing his bandmates and talking about how they got stuck in a storm on the way here, and that's why his lead guitarist has got such crazy hair, and it's a. And that's what I kind of keyed into into his specific accent, listening to that stuff.
That's great. So how did you get into the role of Hank Williams? Because he had such a crazy life with like drugs, alcohol, fathering numerous children. Like, how did you get into like that place to play that kind of character?
Well, I think that the facts speak for themselves, and I knew that I just had to kind of like jump on the train and stay on board for the ride. And the challenge of trying to get under his skin really was I found this tension in him between his external charisma, because he was clearly a rock star, electrifying on stage.
Before the rock star persona was even known.
Like, he was like witty and rebellious and edgy on stage. You know, the Grand Ole Opry was a family-friendly show broadcast on the radio. You know, but this is back in the day, was before television, when people sat around the radio set on a Saturday night and listened to that show. And he was a huge star, and he had edge, and people were really attracted to him. But behind that charisma was this tortured soul. He had so much vulnerability and so much pain. And I found that tension really interesting. And I thought that's what I wanted to explore in the film, is someone who in performance was magnetic and electrifying. But in private, he was lonely and sad and mournful and in pain, and trying to express both of those aspects of him.
Yeah, because a lot of places you get like that tortured artist feeling, but I think he really like encapsulates that torture, obviously, like going out on stage and performing and then having his own life.
I know. I think that was why the songs were so good.
There's a lot of depression that he put forward and a lot that was hidden. Yeah. When he had that alter ego,
Luke the Drifter.
Yeah. Those songs are horrific.
They are.
Just lyrically. I mean, they're well done, but if you hear the story that Luke is singing about, it's like, this guy is so tortured, and so miserable.
Yeah. There's and they're sort of poems as well, set to music. There's one called Men with Broken Hearts, which is one of the most well-known Luke the Drifter poems, and that goes something like, "You'll meet many just like me upon life's busy street, with shoulders stooped and heads bowed low and eyes that stare in defeat. You had no right to be the judge to criticize or condemn. Just think, before the grace of God, it could be you instead of him." And it's like, this guy was heavy, you know. It was really.
Did you hear that accent? I can see why women fall all over him.
I was falling a little bit
I
myself.
know. That was amazing.
Sorry, that was unintentional.
No. Sorry to make you uncomfortable. One thing also I wanted to ask you about was certain characteristics for a character in a movie. Now, when an actor is doing a role and portraying somebody in real life, there's certain things that these people do that the actors don't do in real life. Now, he was a big drinker. Now, actors can fake drinking, whether I'll drink while I'm doing things because I can handle it. Or if you're recovering or just don't drink, they make liquid that looks like alcohol and you can still get through the scene. Yeah. But you're smoking a lot. So are you a smoker yourself?
No, I'm not. They have, actually they have these prop cigarettes that you can smoke, which are
they the old candy cigarettes that you shoot the sugar out?
Yeah, unfortunately, because you have to blow out, so it doesn't work. But there are actually prop cigarettes you can light, and there's some kind of herbal mixture that there's no tar and no nicotine in there. So that's what I was smoking in this.
Okay, because I always wondered about that. 'Cause you don't see smoking nowadays unless it's an old piece or they flash back to something. And I just always wondered how they fake the cigarettes, but I guess now we know.
There's ways and means. But it was important, I think, to show that. You know, he lived so hard.
He did.
And that was an interesting aspect of him, because I think there's a certain kind of person who just has an inclination to addiction, and some people say that's genetic. And they live without a safety catch. And I know I have that safety catch. Thank God. Like I feel very grateful that, you know, I know when to stop. And I have known many people in my life who don't. Mm-hmm. And Hank clearly he was a binger. He binged on everything, and he couldn't just have one cocktail. He had to drink until he was unconscious.
Right.
And trying to represent that aspect of him was interesting, because I think where does that self-destructive instinct come from? Or the instinct to need to escape, because the noise is too loud or something like that.
Let's get into the music aspect of the movie here. Hank Williams, I knew because my grandmother grew up in Illinois, and that was the music that she grew up on. And I don't think I would have known much about Hank Williams had my grandmother not been playing those old records and listening to those old concerts where he was at the Grand Ole Opry and what have you here. This was an amazing transformation as well for doing the music. Did you insist on doing all the songs?
I think it was, we all thought it was the only way to go. Sissy Spacek back in the day sang all the songs in Coal Miner's Daughter when she was playing Loretta Lynn. Joaquin Phoenix sang all the songs when he was playing Johnny Cash in Walk the Line. And I think nobody's interested in watching an actor lip sync, through the song. I think it was sort of to be playing the character and then to be lip syncing would just have been so strange and almost like putting a sort of sound reducer or a muffler on the interpretation. It was like, if I'm going to play the man, I have to sing the songs, I have to play the music, I have to do everything, I have to inhabit everything about him. So that was part of the challenge and part of the joy, actually.
So are you a trained singer, or did you have to learn how to sing for this performance?
Never sang.
Never sang
Never
before?
in my life, yeah.
Well, you couldn't tell.
Yeah.
I say you nailed some of
Thank you.
those, that old style of country music where it was a bit yodeling in it.
Yeah.
Yep.
You nailed it.
Thank you, man.
Like nothing
It was
sound
hard.
forced, nothing sound out of range, and it was just always a smooth transition.
Thanks, dude. It was a lot of work. What I did is I went to Nashville about 6 weeks out ahead of shooting, and I lived with a musician called Rodney Crowell, who's been living in Nashville making music for 40 years. He's won Grammys. He's toured with Emmylou Harris. He was married to Roseanne Cash for 17 years. He's part of Nashville royalty, and he just put me through my paces. It was like if I was playing an Olympic sprinter, I would need a coach. And in this regard, I had Rodney, and we just played and sang every single day.
That sounds awesome.
It was great. Yeah.
How long did it take?
It took 5 weeks. Well, I didn't really know. There was interesting days. I found out so many things about myself that I didn't know. We would start singing Hank Williams, and he would say, "Oh, Tom, you're right on the beat, man. Hank was a blues singer. Really, he was singing the blues, and you're so on top of the beat. You're like a metronome. And blues, people are singing behind the beat. They're just off the beat. They're more relaxed about it. So we just sing Howlin' Wolf and Jimmy Reed for 2 days. He was like, I'm just going to get the blues in your soul. So when you go back to Hank, it's just more relaxed. It's more of a blues rhythm. And all that kind of stuff was just fascinating to me. And in moments when you can kind of like combine the technical challenge of the rhythm and the pitch of Hank's music with my own sincerity. You sing a song like I'm So Lonesome I Could Cry, and it doesn't work unless you invest yourself in that song at the same time as trying to sound like Hank. It was such an interesting challenge. It was cool.
For people who, if you're fans or have an appreciation for that old style country music, Hank Williams definitely was an OG of that era.
Yeah.
The soundtrack that comes with the movie is definitely worth picking up, because if you enjoyed Hank, and I'm sure you're going to enjoy Tom's portrayal of Hank in the movie I Saw the Light, which is out this weekend, get the soundtrack, because most of the songs on the soundtrack are the songs that Tom covers that were Hank Williams, and you do an amazing job. I got to admit some ignorance. Hey Good Lookin', when it was in the movie, I swear to God, I thought that was just one of those traditional songs that everybody knew. I had no idea he wrote that particular song.
I know.
And growing up in the 80s, they used to use it for like the dairy boards. It was like, want to do something with cheese. And I was like, oh, and then I heard it was a real song, and I just thought it was one of those traditional songs that people pass through the generations.
Yeah, it's like, that's what I've heard. Someone told me that it's up there with Happy Birthday, in that if you start singing it all over the world, if you start saying, hey, good looking, people would join in with What You Got Cooking.
Everyone knows it,
yeah.
And it came from Hank. He wrote it.
Another interesting thing with the music portrayed in this movie, when anyone just during times of happiness or sorrow, belted out some kind of religious spiritual, everybody knew the song. You don't see that nowadays. If somebody sang some kind of song about God, everyone would be like, looking at you like, what are you singing? I don't know about. But everybody knew these songs, and a lot of these songs weren't even on the radio. They were just songs that were passed through communities and through families, that if the second you said it, like I Saw the Light, I don't want to spoil why this is being sung, but it's a bit impromptu at the end, where one person started singing it, and then the whole place picked up on it and knew it. And I'm like, wow, everybody knew all these songs at the same time.
Yeah, that was something I discovered when I was in Tennessee. Is I was just like thinking about that time and in the South, and it was a culture of, as Rodney put it, sinning on Saturday, redemption on Sunday, and church was so much a part of the culture, and it was. And singing, gospel was so much a part of that time, and I think a lot of Hank's music is infused with gospel. The gospel and the blues were the musical influences of the South, and everybody had that natural affinity with it.
I Saw the Light is out this weekend. Definitely go see it. It's the biopic on Hank Williams. Tom Hiddleston is our guest and obviously portrays Hank Williams. It would be great if you didn't this whole time and this whole thing was a lie. Like, what is he doing here? A couple quick questions of other projects that you're dealing with and working on. One of them is a new show or miniseries coming to AMC.
That's right.
The Night Manager.
The Night Manager, yeah.
You're working with one of my favorite people in the world, Hugh Laurie.
Amazing.
What's this like? Amazing. Can you explain what the Night Manager is?
Sure. The Night Manager was a novel that came out in 1993 by John le Carré, who many regard as the greatest espionage novelist. He wrote Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. He wrote The Spy Who Came In From the Cold. And we've updated it so it's a contemporary story, and it follows a man called Jonathan Pine. My character. Yeah. And you meet him, and he is the night manager of a luxury hotel in Cairo in the Arab Spring riots of 2011. So there's a huge popular uprising in the Middle East. Governments are being torn down by a popular rebellion. And he's working in this hotel, and he's very polite and affable and well-mannered. And you realize he's got a complex history, and it emerges that he's a former British soldier who served in the Iraq War of 2003, so he has a particular skill set. And there is a personal tragedy that he's involved in, which compels him to take a call from MI6, from the Secret Service in London, and join a particular wing of their work as a spy, as a field agent, who's trying to take down an international arms dealer played by Hugh Laurie. So it's really it's a spy thriller. I play the spy. Hugh Laurie plays the villain. Someone le Carré calls the worst man in the world, and the reason he's the worst man in the world is because he sells Western chemical weapons to the highest bidder in the Middle East. And the challenge and the great thing about Hugh's portrayal is he's so charming and so affable and so seductive. And you think, how could this be the worst man in the world?
How is this Stuart Little's dad?
Making house calls.
What happened to Dr. House? But it's great. It has this kind of cat and mouse element. It's you're never quite sure who is the cat and who is the mouse. And Pine, my character, has to live within the jaws of the beast, knowing that they could snap shut at any time, and if that happens, he's a dead man.
When does this miniseries start?
April 19th on AMC. I can't remember, it was 6 episodes in the UK on the BBC, and I don't know if it's 6 or 8 yet, because they weren't sure with AMC whether they were going to extend it across 8 episodes, but it's the same stuff, it just might be 45-minute 8 episodes or 1 hour.
I'm just envious you got to work with Hugh Laurie.
He's great.
In America, so I know people know him as the dad on Stuart Little and House, but I loved and have a deep appreciation for A Bit of Fry and Laurie and all the stuff that him and Stephen Fry did. Yeah. I love that old 80s stuff and into the 90s and everything.
It's rare to hear that in this country because, of course, that's how I know him.
Right.
He was Hugh and Stephen Fry were kind of like Tina Fey and Amy Poehler, back in the day. They were this fantastic double act, and they did so much comedy together. And Hugh would play the piano, and Stephen, they would do bits, and they did Blackadder, and
Blackadder's great
so
too.
Good, yeah.
We were also, and then as the Brits, we were all so surprised when largely America discovered him as Dr. House, and we're like, who's this new guy? And you were like, he's been around for a while.
Running out of time here, so I'm going to just do a quick speed round. Now that you have this new impersonation that you can do of Hank Williams,
Sure.
maybe somewhere down the line, if Loki has to be undercover somewhere, that accent comes out. And like, wow.
It'd be so great.
Like an open mic.
Yeah. Have Loki shapeshift into someone, an icon from the American South. That'd be great. I'll pitch it to the producers at Marvel.
What's next for Loki in the upcoming Marvel universe?
I truly don't know. I'm going to start Thor Ragnarok, which will basically Thor 3. Yeah, we start shooting in July in Australia. We'll probably shoot till the end of the year. And all I know is that I'm happy to be working with Hemsworth again. He's an old friend of mine, and Mark Ruffalo.
Mr. Ghostbusters now.
Yes. Yeah, who are you going to call?
Yeah.
But the Jolly Green Giant is also joining us in some capacity, which will be exciting. So I think Loki will have a few things to say after that smackdown in Avengers.
Nice.
And finally, I wish Crimson Peak did a lot better than
thank you,
received
man.
a lot better. I think the problem, at least with American audiences, I think they were expecting more horror than story.
Yeah.
It was more of a gothic drama
Yeah.
than it was a gothic terror.
Yeah.
And I think that's people went in thinking, because of the Crimson stuff and the ghosts and everything, they were like, this is, people are going to die and the house is haunted. And it wasn't that. It was a story of a tortured soul and a tortured family. And I think people just thought it was one thing and it became something else.
Yeah.
But I saw it again not too long ago, and I was like, this really is a good story if you go into it not expecting a horror.
Yeah. What's nice is actually since the release, people have seen it on Blu-ray or DVD or they've even seen it on an airplane, and people go, "Wow, why did I miss that?" It was, and they appreciate Guillermo del Toro's artistry. He's so precise and such a visionary, and I think it's he created a whole world with that film, and it was just a privilege to live inside it.
Mr. Hiddleston, thank you so much for your time. We've unfortunately run out of it. The movie is I Saw the Light. It's in theaters now this weekend. We look forward to your future projects, especially Loki and Thor 3 and whatever else you're going to do there. Next time you're back in New York, please come by and say hello.
Thanks, man.
We'd really
Thank you,
appreciate
Eric.
it. Thank you.